Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So, of course, tonight.
Yeah, ready for Mike's brain?
We got the
ready
news.
for this beautiful mind Venn diagram spider web that he's about to.
In my hand, I have these college football rankings. So before we even get into any of that stuff we talked about pre-show, let me bitch a little bit. Let me bitch a little bit.
I couldn't handle what you talked about pre-show.
So this is my problem with rankings in general. This is why I don't like preseason rankings. First of all, when the College Football Committee came together to make their first set of rankings, they basically did a lot of following of the AP poll. It was already there for them. They mixed some stuff up a little bit, but it was essentially the AP poll. So once you do this, you have teams in a certain position, and they lie to us and say, we start fresh every week. You do not.
No, you don't.
You know what I'm saying? And the reason, so let me take one thing here. And, you know, I'm not saying, see, this is the problem. This is the problem with college football fans. When you say things, they ask you hypotheticals. So if you say Indiana's ahead of Alabama, they'll say, who would you choose if Alabama played Indiana today? Irrelevant. Yes, I would pick Alabama, but irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about right here, right now. And guess what? There's 3 more rankings left. 2 more before the actual before the final one. So we have time for this to work out. So rank them how they should be ranked and then let it fall into place. The reason that I say that, one of the reasons that I say that is because I look at SMU, you know, down at number 13. I look at Miami at number 8. Same conference. You know, when I look at Miami, who is Miami beat? Now, you could tell me Louisville because Louisville beat Clemson, but guess what? 2-5 told y'all on Friday. 2-5 told y'all on Friday to take Stanford 20.5 against Louisville. And you know what Stanford did? They just said, fuck it, and won the game. You know what I'm saying? So you losing to Stanford, you don't get to count that as a good win, Miami. You know, maybe the Gators, they turning their season around. Maybe you could call the Gators a decent win.
Now, you're going with this is your AP poll discussion, correct?
Right. But when I look at SMU, no, this is still the college football rankings. But when I look at SMU, you know, like you look around, you try to figure out where their good wins are. Maybe you don't find one, but this is the difference. Miami lost to Georgia Tech, who is not anywhere in these rankings, even though Georgia Tech's a good team. They're just not in these rankings. I'm using these rankings as my source. Who did SMU lose to? The team that's right behind them, BYU, which is another reason I don't like it, because why is SMU in front of BYU when BYU beat them? I know that they lost to Kansas last week. They fell 8 spots. I get it, but I'm just saying. So when I look at this, now this is where we get into what we talked about. So when I'm looking at Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Tennessee, those 4, that little quartet of SEC teams. You know, Bama beat Georgia. Ole Miss beat Georgia. Georgia beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat Bama. Georgia beat Texas. Texas ain't beat nobody breathing. But if you want to look at it and dig a little deeper, Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, who is not in these rankings, but that's Texas's best win. You know, so that's that. You know, you look at Georgia, they beat Tennessee, but they had the tough schedule. I mentioned who they lost to, but they went to Ole Miss. They went to Bama. They went to Texas. They beat Texas. So I'm going to give Georgia a little benefit of the doubt just based on the schedule. You know what I'm saying? So then when you look at Ole Miss, right? They got the big win over Georgia. But you know what they got? They got a loss to LSU, who's not in this ranking. They got a loss to Kentucky, who doesn't have a winning record to date. And by the way, Kentucky, a 20.5 point underdog at Texas this weekend. Furthest game they've ever played west in this country. Them coming down to Austin, Texas is the first time. This is the furthest Kentucky has ever played in this here United States.
That was Kentucky? I thought it was Western Kentucky.
No, it was Kentucky. That's that SEC shit. You know what I'm saying? So now, let's
play in Missouri?
Texas West. More west
Texas
than Missouri.
further west of Missouri? I thought it yeah, because it's Kansas. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then when I'm looking at this, right, you got, Colorado is your first 2-loss non-SEC team because you got Texas A&M in front of them with 1 SEC loss. They beat LSU, of course, who beat Ole Miss. They play Texas next week. But I don't know if A&M's going to get out of Jordan Hare this weekend. So that's an early upset alert for you. Auburn over Texas A&M. You know what I'm saying? But now when I look at this, you peel it back. I look at Army, and I'm looking at Boise State, and I'm looking at Tulane. Those 3 teams, right? My G5s, my top G5s, because UNLV's in there too now. Because you got to have a team in there to boost Boise, because all Boise has done was lose to Oregon by 3 points, and their best win is Washington State, who just lost to New Mexico this weekend. And by the way, Boise State has the number 126 pass defense in the country out of 134 teams. Just saying.
Told y'all Mike was going to be in his little Venn diagram, beautiful mind, Russell Crowe-ness over here.
So as we look at this, and I kept saying, so I got to correct myself because I kept saying for the last couple of weeks, Army's got to go to South Bend. I messed that up. They're actually playing at Yankee Stadium. So, so Mr. Logical should have been up in there. But anyway,
family responsibilities, can't make it.
So let's play a quick game. Check me out, Mike. Let's play a quick game. So now that you got Boise at number 12, you got Army at 19, Tulane at 20. So does that tell me
your AP poll? Yes.
No, I'm still looking at the college rankings, the playoff rankings. Still looking at the playoff rankings.
25 because the playoff rankings have Miami as the 3 seed.
Right, you're looking at the bracket. I'm just looking at the full ranking.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the 1 through 25.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So Boise's 12, Army's 19, Tulane's 20, UNLV is 24. So what that tells me is if Boise wins, you ain't starting shit over every week because if Boise wins out, they're making the playoff. So you ain't starting nothing over. So if Army goes and beats Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium this weekend, they win out. That includes beating Navy, who is not as good as we thought they were. That includes beating Tulane, who's right behind them in the AAC title game. Right? So now you got an undefeated Army team. This is where you painted yourself, committee. This is where you painted yourself. Now, granted, it's not very likely that Army's going to beat Notre Dame. They're 14.5-point underdogs. So let's not, but just for the sake of conversation,
that's
just for the sake of
being First Academy to be 14.5 against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That means somebody gives them a shot.
Right. And just for the sake of full thoroughness here, you know what I mean? If Army wins Notre Dame this weekend at Yankee Stadium, win out, they're undefeated. Boise wins out. They got the 1 loss to Oregon that they're getting credit for more than some teams are getting credit for wins. You know what I mean? Then you got Colorado down here at number 16. If they win out, they're in the Big 12 title game. You got BYU here at 14. If they win out, they're in the Big 12 title game. You got Arizona State at 21. If they win out, they could be in the Big 12 title game. Same with Iowa State right behind them at 22. So where you painted yourself in this corner is hypothetically, calm down, Mike. I'm not hating, just trying to lay out the scenario. If Kansas beats Colorado this weekend, gives Colorado their 3rd loss. If Arizona State, 3-point favorite at home against BYU this weekend, if they win that game, BYU takes a 2nd Big 12 loss. Iowa State's got the Utes. Iowa State 7-point favorites at Rice-Eccles. If they win that game,
Isaac can't throw the ball to Utah players.
And I just learned this word today. And if Iowa State wins Farmageddon, against Kansas State, I just learned that today, against Kansas State, then Iowa State's in the Big 12 championship game. So what you could have is two lost teams in the Big 12 championship game. And one of them is number 22 right now. So if they get through and win the Big 12 championship game, you're going to jump them past undefeated Army, past Boise.
Yep.
Because as it stands right now, looking at the bracket, Boise's number 4 right now in the bracket.
True.
So they would be ahead of the Big 12 champion, perceived as BYU right now, who's all the way at 14. So BYU would be the 12 seed. Looking at this bracket right now, you would give Ohio State BYU, and once they dispose of that carcass, they're going to play Boise.
It's one for bracket on November 19th. It is every year.
You know,
every year the bracket looks optimistic. Every year the bracket looks like, man.
So the question is,
got a chance every single year. And then after all the games are played and all the championship games are played, then the conjecture is thrown in, which is to your hypothetical point. Who would you rather see play Alabama, Georgia, or Indiana? Would you rather see an Alabama-Georgia rematch or Georgia versus Indiana? Like, that's the conversations that happen. They happen with the pundits. I remember a few years back when Alabama beat Georgia twice in the same year. They beat them in the regular season, and I think each time they beat them by a single digits, maybe a field goal, touchdown. And Kirby Smart, he got beat. They lost the SEC championship game. He goes to the podium and he says, I guarantee you that team over there doesn't want to see us again. Well, there's only 4 spots, homie. You weren't going to get another shot, but he labored for it. Like I said, Nick Saban straight up was on TV announcing he was a guest announcer at the SEC championship game. He said, we lost on last second field goals. If they would have had 12 teams, they would have gotten them in. They're going to get the teams in that they feel, maybe even based on analytics. Analytics will say that Georgia's is a top 8 team in the country. Alabama's top 6. Maybe Ole Miss is 11. The analytics at the end of the year will like I said, you're going to get about 16, 18 teams. I'm expanding it to 18 because it's a lot of these different dynamics because 2 and 3 lost teams could end up in conference championships and a couple of undefeated G5 schools could be out there. So you're going to get a pool if you're the committee of we'll 16. We'll go 16 teams.
So
you're going to get that pool, and what they're going to do is figure out, okay, which 4 teams don't fit.
So
even if they're an SEC or Big 12 school. But the SEC champs getting in, the Big 12 champs getting in, the Big 10 champs getting in.
That's what I was about to bring up. So
ACC champs getting in.
So that scenario that I just laid out, everything that I just walked through, the reason that I walked through that scenario is because if Iowa State is 22 right now and they win the Big 12 title,
they're going to jump them into the playoff.
And that's where you paint yourself in the corner.
But that's the thing. I don't think they care about the corner or the paint.
I know, but I'm just here to call it out.
Yeah, we call it out every year. Last year was a prime example with Florida State not getting in. The reason Florida State didn't get in was because Texas beat Alabama. Alabama beat Georgia. You can't tell
the SEC
America
not getting in.
You're not getting in.
And you can't.
And we're putting in Florida State, even though they won all their games.
You can't not put the team in that beat the
SEC champion.
Right.
That was the real conversation. The statement that they wrote down on a notepad and they had presented at the podium, or they had for all the pundits to say, was, we didn't feel Florida State was a complete team because they were missing their starting quarterback, even though he was missing for a month. All right, I mean, so it's like, so they're going to get these teams in, and like I said, we'll transition to our G5 conversation. Where I think you and
we will. But I have one more thing for you.
But as far as like the committee, certain things are going to play out. Like we probably, like your SEC doomsday dream you had with all these teams, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But it would have been dope to see, because we know the committee will not, because they box themselves into this 12 out of 136. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. The NFL has 14 out of 32.
Right.
And even that has very clear lines of, like, if the Houston Texans and every team in the AFC South just hit a wall and the Texans finish their season at 8-9, but they win the tiebreakers that are the parameters that are already set by the NFL, they're in. The committee has parameters that they're going to stick to. They've already made these concessions over the last 10 years. We already know what they are. We already know what they respect. We already know what they want to see. We already know what they don't like to repeat. They didn't want a TCU versus Georgia again, because the championship game should never be 65 to anything unless it's 64. And it was 130. Yeah. So we already know what their framework is. And once you get these 16 teams in, whether it's BYU, whether it's Indiana, if you have the wins with the 12 teams, they're probably going to slot you in. But if you give them any wiggle room and you are a third place Big 12 team with 3 losses, even though they could be the 3 greatest losses ever, you could have played 3 games against NFL teams. They don't care. They're going to get the 2-loss SEC school in that's going to fill up the stadium in the middle of Texas.
Right.
Oh, look at that. Upgrade.
Yeah. So what we got right now, you know what I'm saying? You are ready for that.
Oh, Mike. No, you sneak out. Yo.
You wasn't ready for that. So here we go.
I'm proud of this moment.
So here you are. This is
not facetious. This is dope as shit. Yeah, I'm glad you. No, this is so fucking dope. Keep going. My bad.
So this is your playoff bracket as of today. As you can see, the top 4 seeds are Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise. So those are the teams getting the byes. This is how it shakes out. Alabama and Notre Dame, the winner gets Oregon. Ohio State, BYU, we brought that up already. Winner gets Boise. Texas gets the winner of Indiana and Ole Miss. And then you got Georgia and Penn State in a game that I would love to see. And the winner of that game plays Miami. You know what I'm saying? So now, Mr. Logical, it's time to play my favorite game.
All right, let's hear it.
Guess that line. So, this is from the guy that I want to be like when I grow up, Josh Pate. You know, his show has a deal and CBS has their deal with FanDuel. So, those 4 matchups that we just went through. All right. BYU going to Columbus. What do you think the spread is?
A hypothetical?
No, this is legit. If they played today, this is what the spread would be.
Ohio State plus 10.5.
Ohio State by 21.
What?
By 21. All right.
Based off of what?
World
I'm not a BYU guy, but it's like, they have big football players. Like, they have a big, strong.
Well, you got to figure they're coming off a loss
team.
You got to figure they're coming off a loss to a Kansas team that came into that game 3-6.
Google the average age of the BYU football team. They're like 22 across the board. Like, they're adults. They're not like, look at BYU. BYU probably the same age as Jacksonville.
All right, here you go.
That's crazy. 21 points.
Here you go. Georgia going into Happy Valley. What's that line?
Georgia 7.5.
Georgia by 1.5.
Oh, okay. That's respectful. I was getting ridiculous because the 21 with the BYU and Ohio State. Like,
Ole Miss at Indiana. What's that line?
Ole Miss 3.5.
Ole Miss 1.5. And then finally, Bama at Notre Dame going to South Bend. Touchdown, Jesus. What's that line?
Alabama 2.5.
Alabama. I think I said this already. 1.5.
I was going to say 1.5. I'm like, they can't.
They're all 1.5 besides the Ohio State BYU thing. So I guess you're going to get if this is the bracket, you get what you want. You know what I mean? But anyway, so moving forward, Mr. Logical, I presented a question to you earlier.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And because this is before I get to my random notes, but I just want you to tell me, do you feel that the G5 needs to be removed?
Okay, here we go. Like I said, I told you you're going to like my response because it's a little bit more in my wheelhouse. You can see a couple of these degrees over here. The bottom one is criminal justice administration. Top one is public administration. I was always big into like government, crime, law, like procedures, logistics, like something that like makes sense to me. Something that, like I said, when every time I talk about the committee, you get into the stats and the spread, and I look at like, okay, what are the behaviors of the committee? What do we know for sure? What have we seen that's consistent throughout the years? Even though people feel it's inconsistent, I don't think so. I think they've consistently gone with if you have an avenue to where we can move you out of championship contention, we will, and they have every single time. So what I thought about as far as like keeping the G5 and why it's important for the G5, you have to have something else. So I thought about this earlier. So I have my favorite Christmas movie. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. It's based on a guy, George Bailey.
What?
It's based in Bedford Falls. It's Frank Capra. It's a great film. Me and my grandson.
Where's Bedford Falls?
It's Bedford Falls, New York. So upstate.
Okay.
So in the movie, George Bailey, his father starts building a loan company where you can like get a loan to build your house. This other guy named Henry F. Potter is a greedy guy. He owns everything else. He keeps, when there's like the Great Depression, he bought everything else. There was a run at the bank. He took over the bank. He owns everything else. They have Bailey building a loan. George is trying to get out of town, can't leave. His father dies. He ends up taking over the family business. And in this is one scene, he gives this rant about it. And he was like, not rant, but he was just yelling to the board members. He's like, this town needs this building alone just so they don't have to run the Potter to get anything they ask for. Okay. So with all these other conferences trying to take over everything, you need the G5. You need to give them an opportunity. Yes, we understand that it's not the football products that are coming out of, out west, these smaller schools, Boise State, Idaho's, your Cincinnati's, your smaller schools traditionally aren't producing your NFL talent every single year.
Right.
But they still need an opportunity to play well and have a real goal to get the thing that they want, i.e., everyone in that town needed an opportunity to get a home without having to go to Potter to get some high interest loan. It's like, listen, you can come here. We're a family friendly business. We're going to give you an opportunity. You might not get as many opportunities because we are smaller, but we're going to have this for you. So if you think about the United States has several laws against monopolies and unfair business practices. Sherman Antitrust Act passed in 1890. Law makes it legal to monopolize and attempt to monopolize or form a contract, combination, conspiracy to restrain trade. So all these programs, all these businesses, everyone's trying to take away the big pot at the end of the rainbow for all these smaller schools. If you're not concerned, if you feel like, oh, the quality of football players coming out of Boise State, coming out of these smaller schools and, making all these small schools join the SEC or join the ACC or join the Big Ten, and you're tearing down the Pac-12 and you're not giving them real opportunities, you're creating a bit of a monopoly. So they need to keep that around so these teams have an opportunity to play their 12-game season and their championship and get at least one of these 52 schools into the ring to play around. That's all they're asking for. No one's asking for it to be 24 teams and 6 of them come from the G5 or 5 of them come from the G5. They just want one school that has risen above everybody else in their amongst their conglomerate to be able to represent against the proverbial big boys. The big boys need to win their games. Georgia needs to win their games. Tennessee needs to win their games. Clemson needs to win their games because your path to getting in is easy. Because as soon as you win, you're in. These other schools need help. They need rankings. They need to scratch and claw to get an opportunity. Everybody else has got to win. They can win all their games and not get in. Army can be undefeated and possibly not get in, or go undefeated and Boise State doesn't get in, even though their only loss was to the number one team in America. So they need to stay around. The problem is they're never going to be able to match the money. If you look at who gets some money, and I'm pretty sure you probably already looked at something like this, but if you think about like 2023, the Power 5 conferences brought in $3.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Conference USA in 2023 gave their schools $750,000 each. The ACC gave their schools $44 million each. So it's like you're getting every advantage with the money. If these people are competing and they don't have the money, but they're up there, then they should get an opportunity to play against the big boys. Not everyone. It doesn't need to be six Power 5 schools against 6 other schools and one at large, because that's probably going to be a blowout. But the best of the best from that group, give them an opportunity. Don't disband them. Don't block them out. Just give them an opportunity.
So, long story short, the G5 is welfare. So just looking at this here,
this was harsh.
This is but it's real. I'm gonna get to that. But this is the college football playoff payout this year. So I know it's a little small there. So $4 million goes to each team that makes the playoff. Then you get an additional $4 million for the teams that win the first round games. Or I guess that's everybody. It's the 8 teams. So the bye, you get another $4 million as well. $6 million each for the 4 teams that make the semifinals, and then $6 million each for the championship game. And then, just for making the college football playoff, you get $3 million to cover your expenses for each round that you travel. Because as we brought up before, the first round games are on campus. And then from there, it goes to the bowl games, even though it's stupid to me, because if I'm somebody like, say, Oregon, who's number 1 right now, let's just say it plays out, they stay number 1. Yeah. You mean to tell me Ohio State, who I would have beat probably twice, gets to host a home playoff game and I don't? You know what I mean? So there's that. So when I talk about the welfare, there's some schools out here like Kent State and Akron, LeBron, do the right thing.
There's only so much money you could bump to a program, man.
But the point is that, these schools probably don't belong in FBS. And that doesn't apply to schools like, say, Tulane, or Memphis and schools like that. But there is, I feel, a very definitive line of schools that just need to get chopped away. That's half the MAC. That's schools like Temple.
And that's the thing. Why
because they just don't have the budget to complete. They don't have the budget to compete. That's
the thing.
And they don't have the ability to get NIL.
They can continue to compete at the level that they're at. They're just not going to get there. Like they're not going to threaten this position of a good Indiana team, even though generally Indiana has not been one of the better SEC or Big Ten football teams. This year they have a good time. They had a good run. A lot of these schools, yes, they're paying schools to come play them, and I understand that. My issue is that they are not going to threaten the position of any of the Power 5 schools, because once you eliminate the G5,
right,
then that eliminates their contracts, because now they're not going to be on TV. We see Division 2 and Division 3 playoff games on the ESPN, but because they don't factor into the national championship at the highest level of college football, there's no regular season to where we get to see them. So now when it comes to recruiting, you're just gonna have stacked teams because guys don't want to go to Akron because they're in the MAC, and the MAC doesn't get any kind of airplay. Like if I'm going to a college and I'm a young football player, I want to play because even if you want to transfer, every coach isn't gonna see all of your tape. But if you play Akron versus Bowling Green one week, and you're the Bowling Green quarterback or wide receiver, and you go off four touchdowns, 220 yards, and it's on ESPN, any coach can see that. Like coaches aren't going to so it's still like the opportunity I think I don't understand this whole over insatiability to just limit everything we get and only put the quote unquote best team. It's like put college football on TV. When it comes to picking a national champion, you're probably not going to have Akron lined up against Oregon at any time. It won't
do the
happen.
right thing, LeBron. But
I know we keep saying Akron because it's stuck in my head, but like any of these schools, Northern Illinois, yeah, they had their one.
Hey, they beat Notre Dame, yeah,
Notre Dame, but that's not going to be a standard thing until their program gets bigger. But these programs aren't going to get bigger if we cut them off from the source. And the food chain is the financial food chain. Like I just said, in 2023, Conference USA gave $750,000 to each school. The same year, the ACC gave $44.8 million for the same product. It's the same thing.
It's supply and demand, right?
Who's going to pay? It should be a $43 million disparity between.
And that's what the SEC is talking about right now, where they only play 8 games. Them and the ACC only play 8 games, while the Big 10 and Big 12 play 9 conference games. I'm talking about, and the SEC is basically like, hey, ESPN needs to pay us for that extra game.
But they're getting paid so much.
I know. And that's why I wanted to share this feel-good story.
To these meetings and tell people like, yo, shut up. You're getting enough money. You're getting enough for this shit. It's like, what else do you want? You got boosters giving you money. USC has $1 billion, they have billions of dollars in their endowment from donors and former graduates. The money is running rampant and it's getting out of control.
Right.
It's that's football. Why I wanted to share this Akron's never going to threaten Alabama. Toledo is never going to threaten to win, to beat out, all these small football teams that have stadiums that are smaller than Texas high school stadiums are not going to come down all of a sudden start going to the big house and run an Appalachian State every year. But they should still be given an opportunity as even and as fairly as the playing field can be, which is you're ESPN, you have exposure. Like imagine, think about all the people that, we've shared our podcast with and we watched their podcast. Imagine if somebody had a podcast that had 100,000 subscribers and they only shared your videos and not this show. You'd be like, yo, we are a unit. We should both get an opportunity for exposure. They're like, nah, we only want to show Akron because they came down here and took $3 million and we beat them.
Well, that's why I wanted to share the feel good. That's why I wanted to share the feel good story on the screen, right? Because Toledo went into a SEC stadium this year, got paid $1.2 million, came out of there with a 24-point win, and then on top of that, they got $575,000 from Maryland because that's who they were supposed to play, but Maryland had to cancel the game. So, so they're dependent. Schools like that are dependent on these payments. That's why I brought up the welfare thing. Just like the FCS schools, like the HBCUs.
Because the ESPN, CBS, NBC, Fox, they're all bowing to these teams as if they have other options. Dog, if Colorado doesn't get their games on ESPN or Fox, or if CBS doesn't play Alabama games, who's going to spread your stuff nationally? You don't have your own TV. Like your Big Ten network is under a CBS umbrella. So it's like, it's not as if you have the leverage to just be like, you know what? We're going to broadcast our own games. No, you won't. It'd be like Netflix trying to watch that fight. It should just be stalling and we'll be watching, Navy versus whomever, because they're not going to argue with whatever deal CBS gives them. So it's just a matter of it's just greed. It's just
that's all it is. That's all it is.
All the talent in the world. You have the talent pool
here. The SEC is literally making more than 10 times what the Mountain West is off of their TV deal. And the Mountain West just got poached by the Pac-12, who's going to make a comeback in a few years. Like they took Boise, they took Colorado State, they took Fresno, they took San Diego State, they took Utah State. You know what I'm saying? But this isn't the Pac-12. There ain't no USC, Oregon, Washington, Arizona in that conference.
Cal is in the ACC.
Cal and Stanford. And to your point, SMU
in Atlantic Coast Conference.
SMU was able to get into the ACC, but that's because of their location and the oil money. The school of George W. Bush, by the way. In Eric Dickerson, the Pony Excess. They had that money on standby that a Toledo would never have. So yes, it's fun. Toledo can play against Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, the Central Michigan Chippewas. I didn't make that up. They can play against those teams and then come out. They beat Mississippi State this year.
And then they can play their 9 conference games and they can finish their season 9-3. They get their championship. They get their bowl game. They do the Meineke Card Care Bowl.
Or last summer, actually. So this was talked about in the summer.
They all get their opportunity. They shouldn't lose their opportunity because a couple of conferences want $75 million a year.
So you don't think that, because this was brought up in the summer, you don't think that they should have their own playoff independent of the CFP?
Well, that playoff wouldn't make any sense if they're not getting any airplay. You're just playing.
I agree. That's why
you're just playing extra games. So just play your games and play your bowl game. You're not, unless you're going to literally flat out create a different division and then give it the same type of promotion energy. Granted, you don't have to, you can go FBS level 1, like they do in high school football here.
1A, 2A.
Yeah, 1A, 2A, all the way up to 7A, depends on where you are. If you're a private school, if you're a private Catholic school, you play this kind of schedule because there's a recognition that you can go out and recruit talent from anywhere in the country to come to your Catholic school in Indiana, Georgia, South Carolina, Jersey. You can get kids from wherever they can come, and your team is stacked. You have a $1.5 million budget for your high school football recruitment.
Which is crazy.
You're gonna beat the hell out of all the public schools in your general area, so you have to play a different schedule. That's fine.
Which is crazy too, because for example, I know we keep talking about Toledo, but they're one of the better G5s consistently. Their quarterback last year, Daquan Finn, he left to go to Baylor, and then he got benched at Baylor. So, so that's the other thing. They're going to chase the money because if you're any good, they're coming. Who was it? The Miami of Ohio coach? Alabama was talking to our kicker.
Alabama. He's like, we didn't lose our kicker. We know where he is. Alabama took him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
We didn't lose him. We know exactly where he is.
So basically, there's another. I don't want to. It's not a draft, but there's another. You get from college to the NFL, but now you're going from G5 to Power 4 as well.
JUCOs are tryouts for Division 2 and Division 3 schools. Division 3 schools are somewhat, you can do a little tryout to get to, a Bowling Green or one of these Midwestern MAC schools. And then you do 1 year there, you get the extra year eligibility. Now you're 24, you got your man body. And then you get 1 year at Pitt, you get your 1 year at Alabama, you get your 1 year at Syracuse, and then maybe you get drafted. It's the way that college football is going. Right. I just think holistically, we understand that that's the part. Let's not cut all the legs out from under these smaller schools because you need them. You need these schools. You need, because I don't want to watch just 40 schools play football. I don't want to watch the 18 Big 10 schools or the 16 Big 12 schools or the 14 SEC 16. Schools and the 18 ACC schools. Is because once you get 2 losses, what am I watching you for? Half your players going to transfer out.
Right.
If you get to 6-2 and you have no shot at making the playoffs, you might lose your quarterback.
Yeah, we just saw an Alabama player leave today. We saw Bear Alexander leave USC about 4 weeks ago. Like, that's where we are right now. But
yeah, so
but
like these smaller schools need opportunities to continue to play. They need really good ESPN deals because it's not like ESPN's out here reporting net losses. They're turning a profit. Break these kids off, $2-3 million.
and
If
Big
you're
12,
turning a profit of $1.8 billion, man, break these schools off another couple $100 million so we can keep them on TV. That way we don't have to keep watching Sports Center 8 different times throughout the day. You can put actual games on. We don't have to keep having the same conversation on Get Up, First Things First Take. Like, you can put actual sports on. You can put more basketball on. You can highlight more female programs. It's like they're just chasing the money. The football money is going to be there.
The money is always going to be there too. They don't even have to chase it.
Yeah, you can put anything you want on TV.
Right. And
put
Big 12
conferences, don't cut them out, put them on.
And Big 12 stop playing. Get Memphis and Tulane in there, man. But of course, before we close it out, saying just some random 2-5-isms going on. You know what I mean? Some notes that I took and just want to share with the world.
Real quick, I got a note. I just want to.
Okay, go ahead.
Philly is 2-11.
They are. Well, we